call the meeting to order, please? Would Councilor Mercia lead us in the council prayer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen.
Thank you. Would you please honor our nation's flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Councilor Mendonça.
Here.
Councilor Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Councilor Lowell.
Here.
Councilor Broderick. Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy. Here. Councilor Laurie.
Here.
Councilor Martin. Here. 8 present.
Thank you. Under the city clerk's portion of the agenda, we have the minutes of the city council January 31st, as well as the minutes of city council rules subcommittee January 31st for acceptance.
Move approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Under unfinished business, we have a vote to accept the proposal of Community Teamwork Incorporated for $178,001 and to convey 391 Pawtucket Street, Lot A. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Second reading by title. Need City Council vote authorizing the city manager to accept the proposal of the Community Teamwork Incorporated in the amount of $178,001 to purchase property located at 391 Pawtucket Street, Lot A, Lowell, and to execute all documents necessary for the transfer of property. Councilor Laurie.
I'd just like to say at this time, I can't vote on this issue. I'm on the CTI board, and I'll be voting present. Thank you.
Councilor Mercia.
Same as myself. I'm on the board of directors for the community teamwork, and I will be voting present as well. Thank you.
And I'm also on the board and will be voting present. Councilor Martin.
Whoa.
Well, I'm voting present for different reasons, so I don't know. That still leaves 5, right?
Yes, we just need a vote of 5. We're getting close here.
Pretty soon the rule of necessity is going to kick in here.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Present.
Mayor Murphy.
Present.
Councilor Newell.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yeah, present.
Councilor Martin.
Present.
5 yeas. So moved.
Next, we have under the city manager's portion of the agenda, we have communications from city manager, responses to city council motions and requests. Any discussion? Councilor Mercia.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is some discussion about, in our packet, we had a breakdown of the Winterfest, and it's a very exciting time for the city of Lowell, and that in these doldrum days of coldness and dreariness where the city is throwing out the red carpet or the white stuff to allow people to come in and celebrate and have a wonderful weekend. And we're looking forward to the human dog sled competition. And having said that, I believe that you, Mr. Mayor, have arranged for a dog sled team comprised of a few of us over here, and I guess we will be challenging the school committee as well. So I really don't care if this team wins the whole kit and caboodle. I don't know how we could beat the Nor'easters or whatever, whoever is very quick on their feet. But we must put up the show and beat the school committee. I was talking to school committeeman Dave Conway the other day, and he said that when he took over the helm for Dennis Krzyzak as a coach for the tennis team, he gave a very impassionate speech, and it was so eloquent, and they lost. He did the same speech the next time, and they lost again. So I'm hoping that he gives that speech to the school committee as well, because he said when he finally took in the reins and said, listen, I'm not giving a very good speech this time. If you don't beat the other team, you'll never see your families again. So I'm saying that to each one of my colleagues. We got to beat the school committee or you'll never see your families again. So that is what I'm saying. We're going to try to do our best. And I hope everybody comes down and sees the fun that everybody can have at Winterfest. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Leading off with the most important stuff on the agenda. There was a challenge issued, and of course, it's not much of a challenge. Councilor Newman.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the managers, and particularly to Cheryl Wright on the report on cash receipt policy. I thank you for providing the report. I also would like to know if you would like to expand on it or comment on it, or the future plan in terms of the stamp for all departments.
Well, I'll tell you that the policy is working well. We put this in place in September, and as we check each department on a monthly basis, we've been right on the nose with all the cash coming in. As far as issuing cash receipts, the clerk's office started that next morning utilizing their time stamp to stamp in, or actually stamp out their receipts as we handled them. What I'm doing with the purchasing agent at this point in time is we're seeing if we can possibly purchase in bulk cash receipts pre-numbered with the city seal and department seal on it. I will get back to you within a week or so with the pricing on that, and also on the pricing for just getting a regular stamp and having them stamp the cash receipt books before we release them.
Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. Was that a finding, was that the cash management or receipt, was that one of the findings in the annual audit report? Excuse me. Because maybe others did, but I didn't get a copy of the management letter. You did provide the basic financial statements, but has the management letter been produced for last year?
No, we actually have a meeting on the 22nd on that.
Okay, so the letter hasn't come out yet?
Correct.
Okay. All right, when do you anticipate it? Any idea? The 22nd of this month, obviously.
Correct. If we meet the 22nd, I'd say within a
Okay.
week or two after that.
That's fine. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the responses to city council motions? If there are no other items, and I'll just relinquish the chair at this time to speak on the communications.
Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to speak on a response made to several motions, a few written and otherwise verbal, on the Lowell Housing Authority, because I think it's clearly taken up quite a bit of our time, both here on the council, but also the administration. And I have been somewhat reluctant to speak on the issue, at least initially, because of how little I really knew about all the inner workings and what has taken place. But I do think, and that certainly hasn't stopped councilors in the past, but I do think that over the last several months, the questions that have been raised have brought to light a number of important things and answers really and a better understanding of what actually has taken place and what's taking place now. I think it's important to realize that the project began first out of a desire to actually improve the conditions at the Lowell Housing Authority. For a number of years, there haven't been those renovations that really, I think, were needed, and so it is important to note that. I do think, having walked through the Housing Authority last Friday, that progress is being made there, and that people will be living in healthier homes because of the work done there. How we got to that point clearly has been through an inappropriate process, and the Lowell Housing Authority has taken responsibility as is their, and accepted their responsibility for not having applied appropriately for those permits. Clearly, the Inspectional Services Department back in 2008 and through 2010 was not doing their job appropriately either. And that's clear because of not only issues of, I think, ineffectiveness, but also issues of ethics, really. Since then, since the 2010, I think the city has clearly improved its operations. We had a report last fall that detailed a number of the changes had been made over the last year in inspectional services, not the least of which has been improving the mistake, really, that I think is central to the issue on our part, which has been to allow people to pull permits and not follow up on those people. We now have a process in place that notifies people that the 6 months has since expired, and to really remind people to call for the final inspections necessary, but also to ensure that the work wasn't done without the proper inspections, and that everything is brought into compliance with the code. There were a number of other items, all kinds of operational savings that will be realized not just over the last year, but for years to come. But that really is important to note, because the difference between the department back in 2008, 2009, and now is pretty clear. It's clear from the reports that have been issued now weekly. It's clear from the actual work that has been done to bring us into compliance, to bring the LHA into compliance with the code. And I think we're going to get there because of the really improved professionalism. And beyond that, and you see it in some of the other reports, and we'll get to that later, the Lowell-stat, how it's affected other areas of government. But I think that it is important, having walked through there last Friday, to note that there isn't a significant public health danger there. Although much has been made of it, if anything, it has improved because of the work done. And I think that when others take a look through, they'll find that. The fact that independent third-party, objective third-party agents and agencies have signed off on the plan, I think speaks well to what the work of the department has done over the last several months. Regrettably, it's taken this long, but in the time that they've actually begun working on it, I think it's been impressive, and I hope that we can begin to really support the administration's efforts in that regard, so that the focus is really kept on the safety of the people there, and bringing that many more units into compliance beyond the If there's no other discussion, then I'll move on to,
Counselor Elliott.
Yeah, while we're on that subject, I was going to raise parts of the report that we received as well. I appreciate the mayor's comments. I don't disagree. I just think it goes to show, well, everybody wants this to go away, as well as I do. I think we have a responsibility, and we have lived up to that responsibility to provide oversight from one, in our role, compliance inspections, to make sure that everything is done appropriately and correctly. And I think as a result of motions being filed and questions being asked and reports being received that people living in those houses up to this, into those units, up to this point, what is frustrating is we're told that they're living in safe units. They're still living in units that do not have occupancy permits, as far as I know. And if they have occupancy permits, great, but so they're still not legal units. In fact, any apartment in the city that doesn't have an occupancy permit or even a renewed occupancy permit needs to be addressed. So the entire process and it's been going on since 2003. I know this has been on the floor of the council quite a bit in the last couple of months, but this has been going on for 3 years. And I think if it wasn't for the effort of the council and newspaper for bringing this forward, then nothing would have been done, in my opinion. Because at the outset, there was an opinion that this was just a paperwork issue, and I don't agree with that. So I think as a result, the living conditions will be better. They will be more safe. Who knows if there would have been a fire? Maybe not this year, maybe not next year. Who knows? But in the future. To me, I think that was all but certain. Now that we're looking at sprinkler systems and so many other code violations that certainly have been identified and were needed to be corrected. So I agree. I think we will continue to move forward. But I think there's still a ways to go. Mr. Manager, I was a little concerned, and I did read the report, and it sort of indicated that, we don't have any jurisdiction over here. Maybe this is my own interpretation that, they are a separate entity, and I don't disagree, but, that we shouldn't be asking these questions, and especially when it comes to contracts. I thought we had a cooperate, there was a working relationship, and this report indicates that, we're asking them for copies of contracts. I mean, I think it's our obligation, don't you, considering, the contractors should have been applying for permits, and we still don't know who did the work. I mean, I asked you a couple of weeks ago, who did the work, and you thought it was in-house. And I'm not blaming you, Mr. Manager. You and your staff can only do so much to... when there's no permits, no one's pulling a permit, who's responsible. But I guess my question is almost as if we're asking them for information when they should be providing it. In fact, even the letters that were submitted to the Housing Authority, I mean, are we having to do a FOIA request for this information? And then, I mean, even in the letter saying, we're hoping that you waive the fees for documents to make photocopies. I mean, maybe that's the law, but I guess I was concerned, why are we even going down there, considering, in the past we've waived hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees, and now to me, it just seems, I understand it's the public records law, but it doesn't seem to, do we even have to send a letter? I mean, can't you just call them and say, where are the contracts, what's going on? Or is this just a formal process? Maybe.
Well, if you, I think, Council, you've answered the question. It's the law. They are a separate entity. We can call them up, but if anything that we've learned throughout this in particular is we want a paper trail on everything, so that when questions are raised, we can document that we've asked them for that.
And Anything further, Manager?
Well, if I may, I'd like to respond a little bit to the mayor's comments, particularly as relates to the inspectional services. And I think that I want to thank the mayor for voicing support for the improvements, the vast improvements that have been made in inspectional services and putting it under the DPD. That the professionalism, the progress that we've made in so many areas that were really it was, the needs were crying out throughout the city. Certainly, the neighborhood organizations, the people who dealt with inspectional services on a regular basis, were not getting the responsiveness, and there wasn't the sense of accountability that we were looking for. And there was even issues of integrity, as we know, that we needed to adjust to and that we needed to deal with. And the reorganization that we've done, I think, has paid off dividends for us in terms of better inspections, documented inspections across the board. We've initiated programs that have implemented, for instance, the abandoned properties ordinance that had been languishing until we were able to get that reorganization underway. We implemented our certificate of inspection program, something that the city should have been doing through the years and was not being done. That has allowed us to really catch up with a number of different issues across the city. The receivership program has certainly allowed us to really play a role in making it very clear that we would not allow blighted properties to exist within the city. Just across the board, the response I get from people that deal with inspectional services is all very positive. And I'm happy to say that, that's, I think, an important achievement of the administration, but also, I think, most importantly, of the council. The council made it very clear 2 years ago that that we had issues there, and they wanted to know what the administration was going to do about that. We came forward with a reorganization plan that has proven to be one that saves the city money, makes the city money, but more importantly, is much more effective than ever existed before, or certainly in the recent past. So I appreciate the mayor's comments, and we issued the report to the council, and we'd be happy to get that report back to the council, because we had some discussion that night. I know there are several new council members, and we should make a point of getting that report out so to see the good work that's been done by DPD, by the inspectional services staff, can be put out there and be recognized once again. But thank you.
Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of points. One, that the work performed at the LHA was not deemed structural, and that I just don't want the concerns of the residents to be to rise above a level that's necessary. The fire hazard that's posed by a very few number of rubber grommets in the what is actually metal studs is not really that great. You have masonry walls behind it. You have gypsum board on the other side, and like I say, it's metal studs. So the likelihood that you'd have a fire, first of all, and then to have a fire spread is minimal, and but I couldn't really foresee that happening. That's not to say that the work there doesn't need to be corrected and brought up to code. It's just to say that the hazard posed is fairly insignificant. But to move on to another report that was made here about the Lowell program, it also speaks to what I think is the improvement in the inspectional services department, that we're getting better now at processing these 21D violations, the non-criminal violations, and we've actually brought in over $70,000 of revenue because of that improved process. And I just asked through you, Mr. Chair, to the city manager, or I see the data analyst is present here tonight, to speak about the sort of the future of the program, and the number of documents now that will be posted publicly on our website.
Mr. Lynch.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, respond to your request. First, let me say that I think that the STAT program has proven very successful in the savings that it's realized, the efficiencies that it's realized, and I will say, just the change in culture in working with departments on problem solving. It's exactly as we anticipated it would work when we put this in place and sought to implement it. It's exactly the experience that cities, certainly like Baltimore, speak to when they have implemented this, and closer to home. And some of the councilors, in fact, took advantage of an opportunity we had when we first kicked it off to go down and meet with the mayor of Somerville and talk to his STAT people and see how successful it had been down there, and it's been used very equally well in Amesbury and a number of other communities across the Commonwealth. We have seen savings, we have seen benefit, and we want to roll that out. A big part of that, I will say, is the changes in the budget format that we use even. That's very much driven by our STAT program, that we have performance measurements now, so that when people spend, they pay their taxes to us, they know what they're getting in terms of actual results, because we can measure and we can document and we can show people what the results are of that investment in the city services. Also, beyond that, we want to get this information out to the public through regular reporting on our website. And what you see in front of you is the first such report that's been being put up online, and we're going to continue to do that. We're also rolling it out. Initially, most of the emphasis in the STAT program was put on inspectional services because they were kicking off under the reorganization. They were able to identify certain metrics that allowed us to measure what they were doing. We initiated some conversations with Public Works the first year as well, but now we're rolling it out into all of the Public Works departments. Initially, it was mostly just parks, but we're rolling it out now into streets, into water, into wastewater. We've had some very useful meetings in the last couple of weeks at our STAT meetings to talk about some of the personnel needs and changes that are going to be occurring in the not too distant future as the workforce ages. It allows us to get a handle on that and document it in data form so that we can then look at succession planning and personnel planning moving forward. The report that we put up in January for the STAT program pertains to the 21D program that we have, a 21D statute that the city of Lowell has had for a number of years, but it had never utilized this. And as it documents here, it's a non-criminal method of collecting fines, which are how we enforce certain ordinances of the city. It's just what we've done here since 2008 is put it in place, and mostly put it in place in the inspectional services, but we're also rolling it out to a number of other areas, such as snow and ice violations, something that people always complained that we had an ordinance on the book, but we never actually enforced it. Likewise, the minimum maintenance violations. So what we've done is we've gone out and we've utilized this program to do a better job of enforcement and do a better job of collecting fines that were due to us. And we took a number of other actions, and I'll let Mr. Herbert, our data analyst, is here, and perhaps he can just run through some of what's been done under the 21D program.
Sure, and good evening, everyone, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to just speak a little bit on this report. I think echoing some of the manager's comments, when we first kicked off the Lowell STAT program a little over a year ago, a lot of departments did not do much in the way of collecting data. And so a lot of decisions were made from an anecdotal basis, kind of just visualization, seeing what was happening. But we didn't really have necessarily a lot of hard numbers underneath that to kind of say, okay, yes, this is exactly what's going on. Over the course of the past year, we've been able to do that with or roll out in certain departments, including development services and public works. with the help of the department heads there, a way to start tracking and gathering information. So we are going to start putting more of that information out on the website through a couple of different formats. First is going to be reports that track standard metrics, especially in the Department of Public Works, and then some of these more topical reports, because a lot of the things we do and a lot of the things we see and a lot of city operations kind of cross departmental lines, and I think that's been a real key component of the manager's administration, is kind of breaking down some of those silos and working together. In terms of this specific report, when I first came on board, one of the things I noticed was that our very poor ability to kind of track the way we were issuing tickets and what the disposition of those tickets were, whether or not they were paid or not. We've been doing a lot better job of that in the past year, and this kind of runs through a lot of that. Again, we were only ticketing for a few different violations, even though we have the ability under 21D to ticket for a variety of other violations. We've expanded that, which is key in terms of bringing in revenue, but more importantly, it's a key part of our enforcement strategy. And so we've seen great strides with that. As you can see through the data, we're actually improving our inspections and our ticketing and our fine collection. The other thing is that we actually had an issue where if people didn't pay fines, there were no repercussions. Through development services, we've been able to institute a lien process that this council in its wisdom passed back in 2002, which allowed us to place some of these fines, turn those into liens on people's tax bills. So they are going to be held accountable. And we're seeing some success with that. Again, as the mayor mentioned, we were able to bring in over $70,000 last year. I think the total is up to almost $80,000 now. So I think for all intents and purposes, this is done, the STAP program has been very good in terms of changing the culture and being able to give us a better picture of what's happening on the ground in city operations. And again, I hope this, by putting the reports on the website, we'll be able to kind of get that out to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Herbert. If there are no further questions, Councilor Martin.
I don't have any questions. I do have a few comments. I think on both reports that have been discussed, the Housing Authority report I think is helpful, contains some good information, shows the, I think, persistent efforts of development services here. And the report we had a few months ago certainly spoke to the organization, successive reorganization, I guess. So there may not have been much public discussion of that, but believe me, it hasn't gone unnoticed, and it is appreciated by the council. Oftentimes, councilors, at least me, judge the success of various operations by the lack of complaints, not the complaints. And so certainly that's been one area where there's been a lack of complaints, at least as far as I can see, and certainly marked improvements. And I appreciate this report too, and especially the comments about changing the culture. And one thing that I think we really need to keep focus on and not lose sight of is the goal of this kind of program is not, it's not revenue for the city, it's compliance, right? Especially with code issues and quality of life issues, if the guy across the street from me has, trash that's been put out for a week, or old furniture, or, has any number of things that are kind of unsightly with that property and are annoyance to me, I really don't care that he paid a fine. What I want is, that cleaned up and not to happen again. Now, if the only way you make that happen is with a fine, then that's the way it has to be. But I'd hope, and I think this is the case, that there's a system of warnings and kind of escalating penalties over time, so that people sometimes forget, or something happened and, for whatever reason, an isolated incident isn't punished the same way as somebody who's an habitual offender. And I think this data will help us, track things that way. And I think that's the way it's being used. That's at least the way it was, I think, presented initially, and I hope that continues to be the case. But I think it is a good information and a good progress shown on a way to bring portions of the city that can become unsightly into it's quality of life for all the residents. That's what we need to do. And then people rely on their government because they don't want to get in a fight with the neighbor over his problem property, but they want the people they vote for to take care of it. So I think that's what this is. So appreciate the updated information.
Motion to accept communications and place on file by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Elliott?
I had one more communication that we had received. I just wanted to
Sure, go ahead.
to bring up, and it was on the pit bull report that we received. It might be a good idea just to refer this to the Public Safety Subcommittee at some point in time, because there's a lot of information, a lot of good information that I think we should discuss. There's even a recommendation. I did read a suggestion from Mr. Kiley that we keep the existing ordinance in place, and one of the criteria when we adopted it was to have a 6-month review. So if there's no objection, I'd just like to refer this to the Public Safety Subcommittee for review and discussion.
We'll just add that to the motion to accept communication and refer that report to the Public Safety Subcommittee.
Sure.
Pit bulls. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. If the mayor will resume the chair.
Being just after 7 o'clock, we'll move to the public hearing. We have an ordinance to amend the zoning 169.1, 169.2, Bridge Street, the SGOD amendment, section 9.6. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Laurie. Second reading by title. In City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the code of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts with respect to Chapter 290 thereof entitled zoning by amending Section 9.6.75 maximum non-residential use under Section 9.6 downtown Lowell smart growth overlay district, and by extending the existing downtown Lowell smart growth overlay district to include the area of 169.1 and 169.2 Bridge Street in Lowell. Does the city manager want to just give a brief explanation before we open it up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll ask Mr. Bakey to make a brief presentation on this.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. As many of you may recall from the first enactment of the Smart Growth Overlay District in Lowell, this is a program that was created by the legislature several years ago in response to concerns that had been voiced by many municipalities as to the impact of denser residential development that was being advocated by the state as a priority, but folks from many municipalities were raising concerns about the added costs that they perceived might go with having denser residential development. So the state enacted a program that allowed if you, as a municipality, were willing to adopt zoning under what is known as Chapter 40R, which is the Smart Growth Zoning chapter, we could, as a municipality, be entitled to receive payments from the state to offset any costs that might be associated with accepting the provisions of that. The provisions essentially allow for denser residential development than most suburban and rural communities in the state would otherwise allow, but not denser than what is typical of downtown Lowell. In fact, the minimum requirements are considerably less dense than what's typical of downtown Lowell. So for us, it kind of makes sense when we're looking to try to facilitate mill redevelopment projects in the downtown that already meet the various requirements of this program, that we might adopt zoning under this program that would allow us to benefit from the state payments that come from zoning it in this manner as opposed to in another manner. So essentially what this will do is this will add to our existing smart growth overlay district that presently encompasses the former Hamilton Mills on Jackson Street. This will add the undeveloped portions of the Massachusetts Mills, which are at the confluence of the Concord and Merrimack Rivers off of Bridge Street, and they're highly visible from the Centerville and Christian Hill areas, and as you're coming over the river on that side. By enacting this zoning, we will be helping the developer who has the control of that project be one step closer to being able to redevelop those mills, bring them back into positive use, and also make that gateway into downtown Lowell a whole lot more attractive than it presently is. And by zoning it in this manner, the city will also receive a $150,000 payment at the time of enacting the zoning, and then a subsequent $3,000 payment for every housing unit that is permitted in the district. And the proposal includes permitting 125 new housing units over some time. So I really see this as a net win for the city. The developer is also here, and I presume will speak in favor of the project, and either one of us would be happy to answer any questions that the council has after the public hearing testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Bakey. At this point, we'll open it up for a public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor of the project. If you could just please state your name.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, it's John Rudzinski, R-U-D-Z-I-N-S-K-I, from Boston. And I'd like to speak in favor of the project. I am, as Adam mentioned, the co-developer of the building that is in this new proposed expansion of the 40R Smart Growth Overlay District zone. And to some degree, the zone's being expanded specifically for this building. But without going into a lot of detail, the site has a lot of history. There have been numerous previous attempts at redeveloping the building that have failed. We have a viable plan. This zoning change would be very helpful in terms of our ability to get the project approved locally and at the state level. And as Adam mentioned, it has the benefit of bringing state money to the city specifically because the ordinance is passed and then later on when we pull a building permit. So I'm available to answer questions if any of the councilors have questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the project? In favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Open up for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What is the wish of the council? Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems that, as Councilor Howe would have said, a no-brainer. We're just amending the zoning ordinance to include this Mass Mill 3, which is this project to be in part of the Lowell Smart Growth Overlay District. And we referred this as well to the Planning Board for a report and recommendation. They sent it back to us, and no one came to their public hearing and spoke in opposition. So, and their motion was unanimous to have the council support and enact the zoning ordinance amendment. So I would move approval.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question. This is the Mass Mills on Bridge Street. I'm looking at the addresses you have, 169.1, 169.2. That's an even side number. Just before you go too far with the permits, do you have the right numbers down?
These are the addresses of the tax parcels. The actual postal delivery addresses may be a little bit different, but these are the tax parcel addresses.
I just before I went too far, I just saw it and I wanted to catch it if there was a problem. I think they're 200 and 196. I forget, but that's fine. If it differs, it differs. Thank you.
We've got a mailman on the council. Councilor Martin.
Well, there were similar issues on Jackson Street. You know, you had parcels on both sides of the street having odd numbers and then some having even, but usually part of the permitting process is these things get readdressed. New street addresses as part of it goes on, so sure, that'll get straightened out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mendonça.
I'll just second Councilor Mercer's motion.
Okay. Motion by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Mendonça. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
9 yeas, so voted.
Thank you. Next, we have a order for the 60-day trial. Reading by title, in City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266-6, entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, Temporary Traffic Regulations are implemented for a period of 60 days. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Noon. What's the wish of the council? Move for approval by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Martin. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
9 yeas, so voted.
The next item on the agenda is actually going to be withdrawn. So we'll move on to the next, which is a vote to transfer $273,523.05 to the home program. Vote in City Council order to reimburse the home program ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows: that the amount of $273,523.05 be transferred from sale of property receipts reserved for appropriation fund number 1701 to home program fund number 2705. Order and recommended and introduced by the city manager Bernard F. Lynch. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Elliott.
Excuse me, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, we didn't receive any, well, I didn't receive any explanation for this transfer. Well, first, how come we didn't receive any information prior to this? I mean, this is a pretty significant loan order. Transfer.
Right, we're prepared to address those concerns tonight. This,
Okay, in the future, Mr. Manager, can you please provide
Sure.
a written explanation ahead of time so we can understand or digest what is going on rather than just get a written explanation beforehand?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
This is, if you may recall, we had discussion regarding the issue of the home program back a couple of months ago, particularly as it relates to the property that we just sold to Community Teamwork on Pawtucket Street. There was home money that was put into that property some time ago, and it is a time limit on how long the city has for that to be developed for housing, and that deadline passed. So we're now under an obligation to reimburse the home program for those monies, and so that's what this is being used for. This will enable us now to move forward with a number of by reimbursing this. This allows us to move forward with a number of projects in the city that have been waiting for the availability of home funds. So we see this as a necessity in order to comply with HUD, but we also see it as a positive as it relates to allowing some other projects to move forward, particularly the Counting House Lofts project, the residential project on Jackson Street, and the possibility of the Mass Mill project that was you just did the zoning for, and the Boot Bill project right outside the downtown area.
Councilor Elliott.
So, I guess what my concern, Mr. Manager, is that we're taking city receipts. This is city tax dollars. I understand sale from property, and we're reimbursing federal money.
Correct.
Now, otherwise, $273,523.05 could have been used for something else, correct? Instead of reimbursing this home loan program. I don't want to belabor the issue, but this is, I think this is one of the frustrating aspects that was raised the last time, and I thought it was my understanding, maybe it was the Mass Mills federal loan that was going to be repaid by CDBG money. Is that correct?
It was actually this project, but HUD has informed us that was an action we were going to take to try to utilize CDBG monies to do this, but HUD has informed us that is not allowed. It was a plan that we had that simply wasn't acceptable to HUD.
So is there any way for the city to recoup this money? There isn't. We're paying back a federal loan that someone defaulted on.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Bankey, would you like to speak on that?
Yeah, just to clarify, in this case, we are, not to contradict my boss, but we are not repaying a loan that someone defaulted on in this case. The city used home funds to purchase a property. HOME is an acronym for one of the block grant programs that the city receives from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And the city used HOME funds a little over 5 years ago to purchase a property on Pawtucket Street. And in doing so, the city had to make a commitment that within those 5 years, per the regulations that allowed us to use those funds at the time, that affordable housing would be developed at that site within 5 years. And for a variety of reasons, market-based and some relocation issues with an existing tenant and other reasons, that did not prove feasible or possible. As you correctly recall, Councilor, we came back to you in November identifying this issue and identifying at the time a solution that we had initial approval from HUD to implement, which would have allowed us to utilize our CDBG, which is another HUD-funded block grant program, to reimburse our HUD-funded home program. And initially we had indications from HUD that that would be an acceptable solution. Unfortunately, HUD changed their mind, essentially, and upon further clarification informed us that that would not be something that we would be allowed to do, and that we had to utilize a source, a non-federal source, to reimburse the home program. Now the good news is that in no case is the money leaving the city. It is still staying local. Essentially, it's just transferring. Essentially what you're functionally doing is restricting that 273,000 or whatever to only be able to be spent under the rules and regulations of the home program. Now, interestingly, we just moments ago had a discussion about a project that we would be supporting with a little bit of home dollars, that as a result of the action that the City Council just took, we'll be actually bringing unrestricted money into the general fund. And if it proceeds as planned, well, that will be more unrestricted money than the amount that you're now transferring out of sale of property. So by supporting that project with home dollars, we're actually putting ourselves in a place where there's potentially actually a net increase in unrestricted money that's going to be available locally. And all the money in question does, again, stay local for Lowell priorities and Lowell projects.
So at the moment, Mr. Baker, are there any home funds available? I mean, the manager in his explanation indicated that this transfer will provide additional funds for X amount of projects. Are we exhausting our resources in there? Are they all, pardon me, they all allocated or?
Yeah, the very unfortunate situation, Councilor, is that unexpectedly, when Congress approved the federal fiscal 12 appropriations bill that included funding for all of HUD, they, in this past fall, actually in November, right about the time we were discussing this issue, they made a 38% cut to the home program. And that 38% cut was, again, unanticipated, So many of the city has made many multi-year commitments to a number of major projects, not the least of which is the redevelopment of the former Julian Steel as River's Edge, using our home funds. And the situation we're faced with as a result of that 38% cut, even if there were no other cuts in any future years, and word out of Washington is that the home program is very much, continues to be very much under threat for further cuts. But even if there were no further cuts, we would not be able to support all of the projects absent this transfer that we currently are planning to support. Even with this transfer, there will not be any additional money available for any new projects beyond the ones already identified.
If this were not to go through, and I'm not suggesting that it wasn't, what are the options? Is this our only option? The federal government is saying, look, city lost money in this project. It's federal money, part of the home program. The city has to pay it back, period.
Well, essentially what they are saying is, not that we lost money, but that we used the money in a manner that at the moment is out of compliance with the regulations. And as a result, in order to bring us back into compliance with the regulations, we need to essentially reimburse our local home program with non-federal funds. Now, it is the discretion of the council as to what source of non-federal funds that you wish to use. We tried very hard to identify a way to not touch really any local receipts of any sort, and ultimately the only solution that appeared possible in November has now been vetoed by HUD. So at this point, it really does need to be some form of local money, and it is our opinion, and I certainly would let the manager and the chief financial officer speak for this as well, but it is our opinion that using the one-time revenues associated with sale of property is one of the least bad alternatives available to us, if not the least bad alternative available to us. So again, I wish I was not here before you on this matter, and I wish we were not in this situation, certainly. I'm sure you all share that opinion, but this does appear to be the least bad option available to us.
No, I do share that opinion, and I mean, when the federal government's telling us this is what we have to do, this is what we have to do, I agree. I think this is the least. I mean, the one-time monies that we get from sale of properties that could be and should be used for other things. But if there are other projects that will bring revenue into, by the development of other projects, and this hinges on that, I will reluctantly support it because I don't think we have any other options at this point. I believe Councilor Mercier asked this question when this issue came up before, and I think you answered it, I'm not sure, but I'll just ask you again. Are there any other projects out there that were faced with similar circumstances with this home program? I think you said no, and I'm crossing my fingers that that's going to be the case again.
Well, I actually did not say no.
Oh, okay.
In response to the motion by Councilor Mercier in the fall, we identified that there is one other property that the city had utilized home funds to acquire that has not yet met the requirement for producing the affordable housing. That is a property on Rock Street in the Acre. Now, the good news, however, about that property, and I think it is quite unlike this one, is that there is already a developer identified who will produce the affordable housing at that site. We have been in consistent conversation and discussions with HUD about that, and they are quite comfortable that that plan will work, and they're satisfied with that. So while there is another property that is at least nominally in similar circumstances, we do not expect that we will be back before you with any kind of similar vote on that property, and nor does HUD at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Bakey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, through you to the city manager. With this transfer, are these funds earmarked within that home program fund? Are these funds earmarked for certain projects?
No.
Okay, that'd be decided later?
That's correct.
Okay, that's it.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question, I guess either for the manager or Adam Bakey. I wasn't here on the council when this began. What would have happened if we had done nothing?
I think that's an interesting question. I think at this point, HUD would likely exercise whatever enforcement authority they have to find a way to basically reach down and take the money that they need to take to put it into the program. I suppose if we are completely out of compliance with their program, that could have implications on the other funding that HUD provides us, which I think would not be a desirable outcome for the city. So I think that's really a place we haven't really considered going, and it certainly would be an unfortunate place to end up, most likely.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, while Mr. Bakey's here, to Councilor Kennedy's question, am I correct when I state that it's not earmarked specifically to a project, or I just want to be clear on that? So I know that we talked about a variety of ways that we should allocate this money, the home money, but could you clarify that?
Sure. It is correct technically in the sense that this money would go to the home program generally, as opposed to literally be earmarked to a specific project. However, at this point, the commitments that the city has made to support other development projects throughout the city using home funds require this funding to be able to honor all of those commitments as a result of that unexpected level of cut that the program received from Congress in the fall. So this is not money that would be available for new home projects. It would be one that would allow us to continue to support the projects we intend to support.
Does this, then, would this cover all those projects?
This would put us in a place where all of the projects that we presently have commitments to, including the Mass Mills and the Counting House Lofts and River's Edge and others, those commitments would be able to be honored at least for the next 2 years. What Congress chooses to do beyond that with the program may affect the longer-term multi-year commitments, particularly to the River's Edge project, but that's really up to Congress at this point.
So some of these monies will be used for the Counting House Lofts?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Again, this is a vote in City Council order to reimburse the home program. Do we have a motion to approve? By Councilor Laurie, seconded by Councilor Noon. Roll call, please.
Councilor Madonza?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy?
Present.
Councilor Laurie?
Yes.
Councilor Martin? Seven yeas, so voted.
Next, we have in City Council vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to enter into a lease agreement with VYO Boston Incorporated for city property situated at 740 Aiken Street in Lowell. VYO Boston Incorporated is desirous of leasing City of Lowell property at 740 Aiken Street, consisting of approximately 12,394 square feet of land, more or less, for the purpose of church parking for their congregation and employees. And this agreement shall commence September 1st, 2012, and terminate on September 1st, 2015. Be it voted by a 2/3 vote that the city manager is authorized on behalf of the City of Lowell to enter into a lease agreement with VYO Boston Incorporated for property located at 740 Aiken Street, containing approximately 12,394 square feet, more or less, in Lowell, commencing September 1st, 2012, and terminating September 1st, 2015, at the rate of $681.67 per month. Second reading by title. In City Council vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to enter into a lease agreement with the VYO Boston Incorporated for city property situated at 740 Aiken Street in Lowell. What's the wish of the council?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Roll call,
Could I
please.
have, Mr. Mayor, if I just ask a question?
Councilor Martin.
Is this a existing parking lot, or is this just a
Mr. Manager.
kind of a tax title lot?
This is an existing parking lot.
So are the people using it? I mean, is this going to become the exclusive use of this church to the exclusion of neighborhood businesses, or?
Mr. Bakey?
This is, many may be more familiar with this lot as the relatively large city-owned parking lot that is located to the west and north of the Top Donut in Centerville. And as many councilors will recall, the city already has an agreement very similar to this one with Top Donut to utilize a portion of the lot. And this church, through their attorney, approached the city asking if they could have a similar arrangement for a different portion of the lot. In the process of evaluating whether or not this was something that the city could allow to happen, we did a canvassing of all of the city departments, particularly interested in this case in the response of the Parks Department, because this parking lot is definitely utilized by folks who are utilizing the park that is to the west of the parking lot. And the response we got from all city departments, including the Parks Department, was that the intended use by this group would not conflict with the demands associated with the existing lot. So we believe that will be the case.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
I just wanted to follow up with Adam. You know, there's a softball park that may not utilize it so much, but is the church going to allow if there is overflow? Because there's a Little League park there, and I'm sure they certainly must use that space during certainly in the spring season.
Yeah, again, we reviewed it with Commissioner Bellegarde, and he felt that what was proposed in terms of the usage by the church was not going to conflict with his experience of the utilization of this parking lot to support all of the activities in the park, not just a particular softball league. I can only guess or speculate that may have to do with the sort of hours of operation and demand for the church versus some of the activities in the park. It is also my understanding that the church is interested in this in part to meet some zoning obligations that they actually have argued they don't expect to have sufficient parking demand to actually require, but rather than having to seek a variance, they felt that they could do this, and and if they were going to do this in part, they would do enough to meet the zoning obligations.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you very much. Do we presently have a contract with Top Donut to rent out spaces?
Yes.
Have they been notified about this agreement?
I don't know if they've been notified about this particular agreement, but this does not affect the land, the portion of the lot that they have an agreement with us for.
I just hate to come back in about 3 months. We're in an agreement with a company now, and we begin to rent spaces here, and there's a conflict.
Again, we don't perceive there to be a conflict. It is two different, in each case, definitively defined portions of the parking lot that are exclusive of one another. We also made the two agreements are basically under identical terms, so there's no issue of one receiving different treatment or unequal treatment, and the value is consistent with the market value based of the area.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Mendonça.
Would I be correct in my understanding that this allows them to use the lot, but does not give them exclusive use of the lot? So that our Parks Department can continue to use the lot for parking?
I believe this would give them the priority use of that area. So if they needed it, then they would have the priority as a result of what they're paying us. Again, in the same manner that the Top Donut enjoys the priority over their portion of the lot at this point. But we were very concerned, again, about the potential for conflicts with the park. And again, the Parks Commissioner assures us that he feels the terms here will not be a problem.
So what you're saying is there's no conflict?
That's what he's telling us.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
9 yeas, so voted.
Thank you. Next, we have a communication from the city manager to reappoint Susan LeMay, Joel Cohen, and Karen Golden to the Board of Assessors.
Move to approve.
Move for approval by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Laurie. Mr. Manager.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just by way of explanation, and we have the three assessors here with us tonight, and their resumes are attached. The members of the Board of Assessors have been on a holdover status due to an oversight on my part, but the terms here, as you see in the letter, scheduled to expire on March 21st of 2012, so that's, they'll have a month now of comfort. But we will be moving forward. We're going to be, there's an issue we're having with a number of the appointments that we've been tied up with some other issues, and we haven't been able to get to this completely. But we have an issue here that a number of these appointments have a staggered term, and these should be a staggered term. So we will be correcting that here. I also have, the other issue that we have is some of these dates don't seem to make a lot of sense, why the Board of Assessors would expire on March 21st of a given year, and they should be set on a separate date. In other boards, they don't expire all on the same day. They're all over the place. Some are in April, some are in March, some are in September. They should all be a consistent date, and there should be staggered terms. So we're trying to, somewhere along the line, going back, I had to say 10, 15 years ago, we fell off of that, and which we're working to sort of recreate all of that and put the proper dates and the proper terms into these appointments as well.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie and then Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Susan LeMay, Joel Cohan, and Karen Golden for actually coming down tonight before the council. It's a long day at work, and to come down here after work and wait to be reappointed, I just want to say thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sure. Mr. Manager.
It's my understanding that they're going back to the office after the meeting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, it's good to see these appointments on the agenda. However, this appointment, as you mentioned, this is really only good for a little over a month.
Right.
So we can expect to see these people be reappointed in a month?
correct.
Okay.
With
And-
staggered terms.
With staggered terms?
Correct.
Okay. Well, that was my other question, was I think that what's happened here, particularly the Board of Assessors, I'm not sure about every other board. With the Board of Assessors, the statute requires, or at least calls for them to have staggered terms. And I would imagine that because they were in holdover status, that everybody fell concurrently, and then that's what happened. And maybe March 21st, the answer to that might be that somebody was appointed on that day for whatever reason, and so that's kind of the day they went to with. So anyways, these people will be appointed tonight, and then there'll be something next month that will, okay.
Correct that. That's right. And I think actually and they may know better than I, but I don't believe it was the holdover status that threw it off in terms of the staggering. But we'll follow up to see what exactly happened. We have, as I said, we had this in other boards and commissions as well. We have a 5-member board that 4 of them are all on the same day, and one is on the same day and year. Another one is on a different day in a different year. So again, there's something that went wrong several years back that threw that off that we've been trying to get to correct for several years now.
Right. I had a motion on that I'll withdraw regarding this, and then I have a motion beyond that for the other boards and commissions. As you know, Plan E works best when these people have their terms, because that gives them a certain level of independence that holdovers don't have. So that's all.
And I will say, if I'm one more last point, Councilor, it was your motion that prompted me to move forward, that caught me on that one. So thank you.
Thanks.
Councilor Elliott and then Councilor Martin.
Just quickly, through you to the solicitor, Madam Solicitor, does the charter provide any direction on the terms, the time frames, or is it just say the city will be governed by a 3-member board?
Actually, most of the appointments are governed in the particular areas of the Mass General Law.
Mass General Law,
As
okay.
opposed to the charter. They all have particular provisions.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comments earlier, I said sometimes, the department's working well by the lack of complaints as opposed to, compliments even, but certainly this board has served the city well, and want to acknowledge appreciation for their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today. We have a motion to approve.
So
Motion
moved.
approved by Councilor Laurie, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Roll call, please.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Present.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
8 yeas, so voted.
Thank you. Next, we have a communication from the city manager for appointments to the Hunger and Homeless Commission. Appointment Jude DeHart, a reappointment Marcella Chespanik, Troy Betancourt, Brent Rourke, Sue Ellen O'Neill, David Robinson, Jackie Hayes, Nicole Nickerson, Dorothy Duvall, and Janet Barsorian to the Hunger Homeless Commission. I don't believe this requires a roll call. Motion to accept communication by Councilor Broderick and place on file, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Councilor Laurie.
I'd just like to say thank you to the people being appointed tonight for what they're doing for the city and their time. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to reports for the subcommittee. We have first the City Council Rules Subcommittee from January 31st, 2012.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the subcommittee met last week and voted to unanimously recommend that that we try this out for a one-year trial period, and that we do it for all of the months that are not the summer months, which, because January is gone, would mean that we would do it 7 times this year. And furthermore, that the rotation be alphabetically, so that it would be the auditor first, then the clerk, and then the manager. That was a unanimous recommendation, so I would move approval. And the idea would be that we would have, I probably should have started off with that part. The idea would be that we would have a meeting at the end, the meeting at the end of every month would be dedicated to the city council meeting with these 3 individuals specifically.
Any further discussion? Seconded by Councilor Mendoza to accept the recommendation of the subcommittee. All those.
And then you'd set that up with the city clerk, Mr. Mayor?
Right.
Yeah.
On the motion, Councilor Elliott.
Yeah, so just for clarification, so the last meeting of every month, we're going to have either the manager, the auditor, or the city manager come in, and is that the only thing that's going to be on the agenda,
City
or
clerk.
is it in addition to?
Well, this is a recommendation. Certainly, you're welcome to make an amendment to it, but I think what we decided on was that for a one-year trial basis, we would start so that on the last Tuesday in February, we would meet with the auditor. Last meeting in March, we would meet with the clerk, and so on, and then we would suspend that over the summer months. So we'll actually just be doing it during 7 meetings this year, since the January meeting's gone. So 7 times we would do that during the year.
And just to clarify, we'd work with the clerk to set a agenda prior, of course, to the special meeting.
Okay.
Councilor Elliott?
So so there'll be a special meeting if business comes up that needs to be taken care of at that last week, that last Tuesday of the week? Is that what you mentioned? You'll work with the clerk to set up a special meeting if need be?
Just by way of clarification, the special meeting would be devoted exclusively to either the city manager, the city auditor, or the city clerk. So there wouldn't be any,
no formal
mixing of the 3.
Okay.
Councilor Laurie.
My concern is about public hearings. Tonight, we had a public hearing on a development in downtown. It's worth really quite a bit of money. What would we do with the public hearing? Would we be able to hold any at all?
It would be the same sort of process that we have during the summer when we don't have, a meeting every week. So it would be scheduled in a way that allowed for all the public hearings to take place prior or afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Motion by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Do we have any other, Councilor Laurie?
Thank you. Tonight, we had a City Council Subcommittee on Transportation meet. Myself, Councilors Kennedy, Councilors Mendonça were in attendance, along with Councilors Elliott, Noon, and Councilor Mercia. We had 3 items on the agenda. Parking restrictions at 600 Central and 26 to 28 Lawrence Street. 600 Central, we've moved to send to the full council for approval. 26 and 28 Lawrence Street, we've sent back to the DPD to see what they can do with it. And the last 2 were ordinances restricting parking in front of homes, the signs. And we've sent that back to the DPD for another meeting in March. What they're going to do is try to look at it neighborhood by neighborhood. The idea wasn't to just take the program that's been there for 20 years and get rid of it, but try to look at the neighborhoods and take our time and really move along and see what can be done. What neighborhoods may need it, what neighborhoods may not need it. And we'll be meeting again on the 20th of March. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any discussion on the subcommittee report? Councilor Mendonça.
Just to add to Councilor Laurie's report, the motion is that we are moving forward with, is to recommend approval of the recommendation of the traffic engineer, which at that location on Central Street
600.
is to change the limitation on parking from 15 minutes to either an hour or 2 hours, depending on the area.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Councilor Mercia.
And if I could add to that, changing the 15 minutes to 2 hours, that's a beauty shop. And when women go into the beauty shop, it don't take 15 minutes. At least in my case, it doesn't. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Councilor. Motion to accept the report and recommendations to place on file by Councilor Mendonça.
Yes, and there's in the motion to...
Right, and the motion as well to adopt the
recommendation of the traffic engineer.
Right. Motion by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Also under subcommittees, I would just say that we're looking to schedule a special meeting on the issues downtown, the public safety issues downtown for February 16th, Thursday at 6:30. Councilor Laurie.
And we do have one more subcommittee meeting next week. It's the educational partnership with the university. Chancellor Meehan will be here at 5:30 to speak on developments at the university.
Thank you, Councilor.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Kennedy.
While we're talking about public safety.
Sure.
Community to the city manager. Could you see if we can beef up the police presence downtown, particularly late at night, especially around, I guess, the corners of the intersection of Palmer Street and Middle Street?
Mr. Manager.
If I may, Council, we have done some of that. We're planning to do more with the $100,000 that we transferred into the overtime account so that we could beef that up, and that's how we're allocating that. We're also partnering with the university as well as some of the other law enforcement agencies in the area, but we are, I'll be sitting down with the chief and going over some of those strategic plans to do that, and Palmer and Middle is certainly, I agree with you, that's an area that needs to be looked at.
Thank you. Councilor Mercia.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you clarify what you're just saying with the downtown issues, which they're traumatic, and I heard from a number of people that live downtown and the issues that's taken place there and the things that are happening. So I'm glad that we're having that subcommittee, and it's for February 16th at 6:30. And what subcommittee is this?
This will just be a special meeting.
Oh, a special meeting.
That's a Thursday at 6:30.
Are we notifying the people downtown?
Yes,
Kathy
yep.
Marson, we are notifying them. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Mr. Manager?
And I will, I've already spoken to the chief to set aside some days, and we're going to be
Yes.
here. The chief is going to be here with myself to talk about the issue of police coverage in the area, what the issues are that we're seeing down there. You know, this is something that we've talked about with the council before, but the situation continues to be difficult, and so but we'll be talking about that and talking about some additional strategies we'll be
Great.
utilizing.
That's great. Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Could we also invite the License Commission to participate in this meeting
Yes,
as
we will
well?
be,
If
yeah.
if it is, and that's, is the topic specifically about downtown safety issues, public safety issues?
Yes.
So I think it would be advisable to at least invite them to this meeting, knowing that the problems clearly are with the establishments downtown. And I think are we going to reach out to, the people that own the establishments? I know they were here once, but if we're going to discuss the issues, I think it'll be important to have all the parties in the room because I agree. It seems that we've put additional resources on it. The problem, it's either getting worse or it's not getting better. And I do think it's incumbent upon the council to have a meeting, and it's a good idea to find out how do we solve this? How do we put a plug in the dike? Because it's, I think all of us are receiving complaints and concerns with downtown, and it's an ongoing problem. And so I just want to make that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councilor Elliott. I'd love to see the business owners here. I was at the last downtown neighborhood meeting, and they're actually going to have a meeting, I think, at the Parkway or over the Parkway, maybe in March. So they are trying. I've been down there, and there's a great police presence at night. I was down there one night to about 1:45, 1:30, 1:45, and there was a huge police presence. They were doing a great job, but unfortunately everyone empties out of the establishments at the same time. But yeah, if we could have the business owners here, it'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. That was certainly the intention, to invite all parties. Any further subcommittee reports or announcements? Okay, moving on to the motions section of the agenda. We have the first motion by Councilor Elliott. Motion requests the City Council request Youth Services Subcommittee to meet with UTEC to get an update on the vote initiative. Seconded by Councilor Laurie. Councilor
Thank you.
Elliott.
I should have said vote 17. That's the initiative, vote 17 Lowell. So I got an email, I think, members of the Youth Services Subcommittee got an email from Carleen Kirksey, and she's the leader of the teen organizers at UTEC, and they would like to meet with the Youth Services Subcommittee to give us an update as to what's taking place in Vote 17 campaign. So that is the gist of the motion. I told them I would file it, and then if should it pass, I will set up a subcommittee meeting to have them in and to discuss this this issue.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And on the same note, I'd like to refer my previous motion some weeks ago about opioid out of control and with the youth, and I think that should go there as well. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to make that in the form of amendment, that makes a lot of sense. While we have, these youngsters at the subcommittee meeting, get some opinions, some direction. What can we do, and how can we collaborate together to get a handle on the drug abuse of these prescription drugs and others. So I support that amendment.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion as amended, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by Councilor Kennedy. City Council requests city manager develop an aggressive plan to collect delinquent real estate taxes in the city.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Kennedy.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. This motion is aimed at trying to reduce property taxes, or at least lessen the tax burden for taxpayers in the city of Lowell. Last week, I asked the treasurer for a report for a list of all the property that had municipal liens or that was delinquent, and she provided me with that report. And as it turns out, the list for municipal lien properties amounts to a total of $10.5 million rounded. The delinquent taxes are another $1.2 million rounded, which is quite a bit of money. Also, during last week, I had an opportunity to discuss this issue with the treasurer and with the city manager, and actually with other interested parties. And what several cities do is they sell off the municipal tax liens to people, dollar for dollar in many instances. And this is something that Worcester has done, Haverhill, Lawrence, Framingham has done it, and several other communities in Massachusetts over the past several years. I think that it's a pretty exciting idea, and I think it's worth trying. I mean, the potential here, just the municipal lien money is $10.5 million. That's the potential. I'm not suggesting that we could get all 10.5, but we certainly should be able to bundle up quite a bit of it and then sell it off. And if we can sell it for, dollar for dollar, then the city's doing pretty well, and it would result in a pretty good influx of cash for the city. I think that we have to be, this isn't a brand-new idea in Massachusetts, but it is a new idea for Lowell, and I think that we have to be somewhat judicious about the way we bundle the liens that we're going to sell off. But I think this is we could really do well with this plan, and so I would like the city manager to take a look at it and come back, and maybe, I think there are two ways to do it. I think you can do it by auction, but I also feel like you can do it with an RFP process. And I think the RFP process probably gives us more control over how it's going to be done than the auction, than just doing it by auction. But it can be a lot of money for the city. It can have a big impact for us, and I think we should take a look at it. Going forward, if it is successful this year, this is something that we could do every couple of years, and collect that money instead of just having it be on the books for years and years. Collecting, 10.5, 1.2, I think that's 11.7 rounded. That's a lot of money. And so that's what the motion is intended to do.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilor. I couldn't agree more. I handed out earlier this evening, again in response to your motion, just to have the council have in front of them the efforts that have been underway for the last couple of years, and you can see that the last several years, and you can see we've made important strides over the last 5 years in terms of collection of these delinquent taxes and properties that are in tax title, and that was a result largely of some changes we made in the process that we were using. But in fact, we are, I think I indicated last week when I went through my presentation of the accomplishments of towards our goals and objectives, and I referenced a report that we had that we'd be presenting to the council on this issue. And it is exactly, Councilor, I think it's great that you raise that, because it's exactly as you've described. Quite a bit of work has been done in the law department with the treasurers and with the planning and development people to bundle these tax liens and put them out in a way where we're shooting right now for the April timeframe to actually sell these off, and some of them we'll have to hold on. We want to hold on to for development purposes. Some of them we're not anxious to put out because they're people that we know are meet certain exemption categories that are elderly or disabled, and so we're trying to work with those people with regards to payment plans. But we'll have a very comprehensive report next week for the council on what we're doing. Worcester has been very successful with this, and they actually do it on an annual basis. And it has, so we've been out to Worcester, we've spoken to them, and again, I think it's a useful program that will really add on to the efforts we've made over the last couple of years. But as you've described, it is something that's been very successful in other communities and one we're anxious to work on.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by Councilor Kennedy.
Withdraw the motion.
Motion withdrawn. Next, we have a motion by Councilor Kennedy. Request the city clerk provide a list of all boards and commissions along with the expiration dates of members. Seconded by Councilor Laurie. Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just briefly, I don't know whether or not there are holdovers on the other boards and commissions, but I suspect that if the whole Board of Assessors was held over, that there probably are some here and there. And so, as I said earlier, planning works best when these people have their own appointments. It gives them a certain level of independence that they don't have if they're in holdover status. So, actually, the motion is directed to the city clerk to provide a list, but assuming that there are holdovers or vacancies on some of these boards, I would just ask that the manager look towards maybe increasing the diversity on the boards. And maybe there are more women and more ethnic groups that could be represented on some of these boards than what we have now in the city.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the motion. As Councilor Kennedy said, Plan E does work better when you do know your terms. What also concerns me is board members who are over, how they may vote. If they really don't have something to look forward to, or if they know they're going to be leaving the board, it would concern me on certain votes, what they may, how they may behave, how they may act on a particular vote. And so I agree with Councilor Kennedy. Thank you.
Councilor Noon.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the managers, I thought that all these board member and commission members is also posted on the website. Is that correct, Mr. Manager?
It is.
And also the term as well.
Well, we've had some issues there. It is up on the, but Councilman Donster, in fact, has noted this for us, that and I know that the city clerk is working on this, to those records have been, again, fallen out of due to some of the turnovers that we've had with some staff. That hasn't been updated as regularly as it should be. So that's being worked on now as well. So.
Thank you. I also support Councilor Kennedy in terms of diversify the board, not only with ethnicity, but also genders as well, so that we have a very diverse member of board or commission. Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
And if I may, Mayor, as Mayor, I agree with that goal as well. And I think that we're required, in fact, to present a report, I believe it's to HUD, on a regular basis regarding the diversity in our boards and commissions. And I'm very proud of the fact that that has changed dramatically over the last several years. But we have a long way to go with regards to diversity. And so when I'm making my appointments, I'd certainly seek to have representation from different ethnic groups, from genders, and even though it's not really measurable in that type of report, and not exactly our goal here, but even diversity throughout the city as to the neighborhoods that are represented on those. But our goal certainly is to change the ethnic makeup and the gender makeup of many of these boards.
Any further? Councilor Martin.
Yeah, well, I certainly support the efforts toward diversity, but having been former chair of the Conservation Commission, I think, there were members there that felt very strongly that we needed people from every neighborhood in the city. At the same time, you like to also have some diversity of expertise. You know, Conservation Commission wouldn't be very effective with 6 lawyers on it, but maybe with one, if you get the right one, that's okay. But, you know, there are engineers, there's land surveyors we had on that commission. We had an environmental compliance officer at a local company. And that's just that one. So different fields of discipline can bring expertise to bear on different types of boards. So I know you take that into account, but that should be a goal that's considered as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by Councilman Donza. City Council requests the city manager have the solicitor provide a summary of pending lawsuits as stipulated in Chapter 50, Section 7, 8A3 of the city charter. Seconded by Councilor Mercia. Councilman Donza.
Yes, anyone that looked up that section, it basically is a part of the city charter that stipulates that the solicitor will provide a status of pending lawsuits annually in February. So that's all I'm asking. I do appreciate the sensitive nature of what could be in this report, so I fully expect that it would be given an executive session and that nothing would be made public that would be detrimental to the city's position in any of these lawsuits. At the same time, it would be good to know what kind of lawsuits there are out there, to maybe consider, is there a change in city policy or city ordinance that could reduce or eliminate some of those lawsuits? And on our budget, we have an item for court judgments, so it would be easier to evaluate the appropriateness of that number if we knew our liability in pending lawsuits. So that's the intent of the motion.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. I don't know if this would be covered under the motion, but could we also get or include any, I guess, complaints filed at MCAD? Would that be covered underneath that, or would you object? I think that would also be, I don't know if that's really a lawsuit or not, but.
Madam Solicitor.
Sure, that would, Councilman Donzer and I had spoken earlier, and that is something that would be considered. And in fact, we talked about maybe grouping them as sort of an oral report in executive session, so the council can get a sense as to where does our liability arise from, what nature of cases, and as he was saying, you know, are there things that we can do to begin to reduce them? And that was something that I think the council years ago had looked at when there was a large number of civil rights violations. And a lot of improvement has occurred in that area, and as a result, we fortunately really get very few. We have a couple maybe every year, 2 or 3, but down from what those numbers used to be.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Manager, and then Councilor Laurie.
Councilor Laurie can.
No, go ahead, Mr. Manager.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that the provision that Councilman Donzer raises is possibly pre-Plan E, but I think it's very useful, and I actually believe that having the type of meeting with the council in executive session to bring them up to speed on the types of cases we're having and give some background information would be very useful to the council. And I would actually suggest that we try to do it twice a year. So that if there are any changes that happen, that we could, so looking at something in the, this time of year and then maybe the fall, that we could provide the council with that type of information.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if claims would come under the same issue as lawsuits. Every week we seem to send claims to the law department, and it's my understanding we really aren't responsible to pay for all of them. A lot of times there's a third party. Maybe we take the money from the bond, and I think it would just be interesting to see that also, is where we stand with personal claims and how much we pay as opposed to third parties. Thank you very much.
Madam Solicitor.
Sure, we had, I think as I had mentioned a couple of meetings ago, we do sort of we keep data on all of that stuff, on all of those items rather, and There are many claims that there is very little liability, generally speaking, for the city. Some of the claims that come through the council, Chapter 84 claims, in most communities, probably 99% of the time, those claims are going to be denied. But we'll include that in sort of an oral report, giving the data as to how many we're getting, how many we're paying out on roughly, and roughly how much it's costing the city.
Thank you. No, I just, one of the reasons why I bring it up, I know the law department does a lot of work, and they do save the city a lot of money. And I think it should be pointed out, the work they do, doing what they do save, and, thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. The last motion of the night we have from Counselor Mercia, request the city manager provide an updated list of all department head phone numbers. Seconded by Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that we're in the process of working to change and upgrade the phone system. I know that we're doing that. I just wonder when it'll be completed. I know that we did get a whole sheet of all the department heads' phone numbers, and I appreciate that. And this motion started because when a new council takes over, they usually get like a booklet like this. And I appreciate the fact that you did very quickly put forth numbers. But I was so frustrated when I went to call the clerk's office and I dialed 978-970-4160. Very easy. It said, doo-doo-doo, the number that you have reached is no longer in service. So I said, oh yeah, that's right. We changed the 970 to 674. So I thought 978-674-4160, and it said, the number you have reached is not a working number in the city of Lowell. I said, what? So it turns out that that number turned to be 978-674-1154, nowhere near of anything that I could ever fathom. So having said that, I think it's only right that this council gets an updated book. I don't know when that's going to be. I appreciate the one sheet. I prefer the whole booklet because sometimes I don't want to talk to a department head. I want to talk to somebody else, another, like Michael Herbert, data analysis. He's not a department head in here listed. Maybe I want to talk to Ryan Wynn. He's not listed. Maybe I want to talk to someone from the traffic division. Maybe I want to talk to someone in the sign shop. That's not a person that's a department head. Or Diane Trad or Teresa Parks. I tend to like to ask questions, and so it's not necessarily the department head that I would want to speak to. So I appreciate that you sent that. Very, very efficient and quick, but I still am waiting for this. And do we know when we might get it? When will they be done with the phone lines? And second, are the numbers posted online for the public? Because if I'm as frustrated, they're probably just as frustrated too.
Mr. Manager.
And Counselor, I'm equally as frustrated. It's very difficult for me to work through this as well. But we're hoping to get this thing wrapped up and pinned down within the next month. And we'll be getting those books out and getting everything up online. We've run into some issues with Verizon and the contractor or the technology people that are doing this. But the good news is it's saving us a considerable sum of money. It is a better phone system, and I think the payback on this is about 2 years. So and then it's all money in our pocket. But we're pushing on this, believe me, as quickly as you would like to see it done.
And I'm wondering why we had to change the 970 to 674.
Someone else may have that. I don't have that answer.
Well, just by way of information, I think the 970 numbers still actually work, with the exception of one day last week when they had some problems, which might have produced the sound effect you replicated there. But they're supposed to still work.
Correct.
For eternity, as long as you're here anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
So can I just follow up on that, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
The numbers that we still have, the telephone numbers that Council Mercia has in her book, those are going to still stay in place
For my understanding is for a very, very considerable amount of time. I don't know about eternity, but for a very, very considerable amount of time, so that it won't be because we have all types of information out there, letterhead, business cards, and the like,
Right.
and all of that will stay in place, but the actual number will be the 674.
So people at home, and whatever
Should
numbers
still
they
be able to
have
get through.
on the refrigerator or the roller, they'll still be able to use it, and those will still stay in place. Because I ran into the same challenge that Council Mercy did, trying to get the clerk the other day, but knowing that's going to still be in place. And what was the purpose? Why do we need this 674 at some point in time? It'll go away?
The 674 will stay.
I mean, excuse me, will stay, and the other ones will?
The other ones, the 970 will stay for several years, if not longer. But what happened was we moved away from the Verizon Centrex system to a voice over internet protocol-based system that we were paying somewhere in the vicinity of $250,000 a year. More than that for the Centrex system, and by moving to this other system, we eliminate that cost.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. What I meant to say, it'll seem like an eternity. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.